Hi folks, Josh Knight the First here with another episode of Rider Rewind, coming to you with episode 17 of the series. Let's get right into it. So this week on the show, we're actually getting into a new portion of the story here for Kamen Rider Geo. Now we're actually focusing on the upcoming Day of Oma, which is apparently the day where everything goes to crap in the story and Oma Geo takes over. But that might not be the case, given that we're given a lot of new information based off a character we kind of already know, but we're seeing in a different light this week. Now, as some of you might know, we do have a lot of upcoming power-ups and new gear for the riders and a new rider coming in, so we need to focus on saving money where we can if we're thinking like the studio. And one of the ways that we're going to do that is reusing suits in many different ways. And part of the way we're going to see that is actually just here in the first 3 minutes of the episode. So we see that Sougo was having a dream that instead of waking up in the current year 2019, he's actually woken up on January 1st, 2022, so he's several years into the future. Now he goes outside to check on all of this when he's attacked by the Dustards. Now the Dustards are the grunts from the series Kamen Rider Forze, and of course their name is just kind of moving the word Stardust and taking the back half and putting it on the front, Dustard. That's how you get the name. Now the fact that the Dustards look like ninja actually plays into what's about to happen. So Sougo is attacked by the Dustards, but apparently doesn't transform into Geo. Instead, he's saved by another character named Kagura Rentaro, who reveals himself as the rider of that year, the ninja-themed Kamen Rider Shinobi. Now some of you might recognize Hideya Tawada there in the role of Kagura Rentaro. He was previously Star Ninja on Nin Ninja a couple of years back. Well, here he is again in Kamen Rider, now joining a very selective group of people who have been in both Super Sentai and Kamen Rider. Now here, seeing that character there of Rentaro, very quickly, I didn't think I was going to say this, I like Kamen Rider Shinobi right from the get-go. So first off, let's go ahead and talk about the motif. Here in Kamen Rider, we haven't had a lot of ninja-themed riders. Technically, Z-Cross in the Showa era was meant to be a ninja-themed rider, but in the current era, we've never got a straight-on ninja rider, unless you count the movie rider from Kamen Rider Exade. Otherwise, any ninja sort of theme in a series is just a power-up for one of the riders. Now, since we already reused grunts from a different series, we're actually going to be reusing parts from a different Kamen Rider's suits to make a kit bash, which is basically doing just that, taking different pieces of suits to make one new thing, and that's how you get Shinobi's costume. So we'll go over that real quick. The head of Shinobi is actually a ride player's helmet from Kamen Rider Exade. Same thing with the shoulders, those could be Exades or Genmus from that series. The body suit is Kamen Rider Ghost, just painted a little bit different, and of course we're reusing a Jiku driver there for the belt. So we see very quickly that Shinobi is able to dispatch of all the Dustards using his own specialized ninja techniques of Strong, Megaton, and Finish Nimpo. Now I see, without the use of an actual stylized weapon, because they didn't want to make another one of those for the series, he seems like a fully fleshed out rider. I would watch 48 episodes of this guy. The fact that he's speaking to being a shadow to protect the weak, yeah, that's absolutely something I want out of a ninja series. Toei, why aren't we getting this? Well, actually we are, because they announced a spin-off series, so good on that. But now that I'm done gushing over Shinobi, we see, unfortunately, that this was all a dream. Sougo was just dreaming the whole thing up, but now we're starting to wonder about the nature of his dreams, given everything that we've heard about his dream about the Day of Oma. So he tells Tsukuyomi and Geiz that he had this dream, and he wonders if they have any information on them. Now they do use this to uncover something that I was wondering about for a good chunk of the series so far, as to what do they know about riders of the future. Well, apparently this is the workaround here, that on the Day of Oma, when Sougo becomes Oma Geo, that wiped out every rider from history. So apparently from that point on, there were no new Kamen Riders save for the power of Geiz. Now to further impress upon the audience that this is actually a really messed up scenario, Woe shows up to tell everybody that there's another rider roaming around that shouldn't be there because his book has no record of him. So this is the point in the show where we actually take the time to go ahead and introduce who we're referring to as another Woes, or White Woes, who is this secondary rider who's showing up from the future, but he's from a different timeline. We'll go ahead and get that out of the way now. He's from a different portion of the future where the timeline seems to have forked off, one in the direction that we've already been warned about, and another where apparently Geiz is the person who stopped Oma Geo and he became the savior of the world. Now of course he's being played by the same actor who's already playing Woes, but beyond that, he seems to have a slightly different personality and a different set of equipment. For starters, the book that he has is more of a tablet, and he's basically using it like a death note. We see revealed in the next scene that he's talking to Ood, trying to get more information on another Shinobi, when he seems to use this to influence the outcomes of the future, which, when you look at it and break it down, that's how a death note works. works. Now, of course, Ura and Ora have no idea about these new riders or where they could have possibly come from. Apparently, Schwartz had gone into the future just a little bit to get the Another Shinobi Ride Watch and bring it back into the present. Now, for whatever reason, he was able to reach into that new timeline that's been created, but technically that event hasn't happened yet, as far as we're concerned here in the present. So how was he able to do that? Now, to top it all off and make matters worse, the fact that there is another Shinobi running around means that we need to know who that was. Well, unfortunately, it was Rentaro, 2019's Rentaro. We see that Ura gave him the Another Shinobi Ride Watch, which apparently turned him into Shinobi before Shinobi even happened, so that's its own sort of paradox. Now, it doesn't take long for the entire cast to figure out that all these things are connected. Another Shinobi and the White Woes going around trying to figure these things out and presenting to everybody that he's actually here on Geiz's behalf from the future. Now, to that end, he says he's here to aid in his battles, which sounds kind of weird because if you're from the future, you know the outcomes of all these battles leading up to when he defeats Omagio, so technically he doesn't need your help, you're just trying to get yourself in there. But apparently this is a good enough excuse to introduce our third rider for the series, Kamen Rider Woes. So we see that White Woes is equipped with a new device called a Beyond Driver, which is completely separate from the Jiku driver that we already know. It uses a separate kind of watch called a Mirai watch, using the term Mirai, future, and Ride Watch, combining those together. He'll insert that watch into the Beyond Driver that's related to him and transform into the smartwatch themed Kamen Rider Woes. Now, for what it's worth, a lot of people have brought this up very quickly that he looks a lot like Kamen Rider Necrom, which was the third rider there in Kamen Rider Ghost, and I do see the resemblance. They're primarily kind of off-white and green accented, so I get it, and the face is kind of similar too. We also see him begin to use his new weapon, the G-Con Despair. Now, this is meant to be a pun on despair, putting those things together, and every time his weapon calls out an attack, it's going to be some kind of a pun. The Japanese do love their puns like that. Now, beyond the use of his weapon, we actually need to see how he works in action here in the show and how he fits in with all the other riders. Now, we do see Geiz and Gio fight in this episode, but really it's not about them. We're introducing a new rider here, two technically, if you count Shinobi. Now, as far as Woes is concerned, the fight looks pretty good, and as far as I'm aware, that's Eitoku, a veteran tokusatsu actor, suit actor there, who started out as Kick Hopper. He was Uratados, a lot of your favorite secondary riders, in the suit there for Woes. Now, the thing of it is, I do like him as a suit actor. I think he's really good, and I think he's really in the best position to take on the main suit acting role once that time rolls around. But beyond that, as far as he goes here in Woes, he's doing just fine. The thing I have an issue with that you've heard me talk about over and over again is the wire work. Now, there's something that you'll see in a lot of Kamen Rider series where when they're kicking, you'll always see their hand in the air like this. There's a wire that they're holding on to make the kick happen. Now, a lot of the times you can go in one of two directions, either kick and edit out the background, or sometimes if you're doing a kick that's in motion, usually you'll see them holding onto that wire. A good example of that is the last episode of Kamen Rider Ghost. You can clearly see that Seiji Takaiwa is holding onto the wire there for that last kick. And so with the help of his tablet and the Time Explosion Rider Kick, Woes is able to make very quick work of Shinobi. But at this point, this is all just an introduction. Not a lot has changed in the episode, and that's actually where the episode leaves off. And we're going to go more into this next episode with White Woes, using more of his powers and actually trying to use the Another Shinobi Ride Watch for himself. So all in all, it's a pretty concise episode. It's very much to the point. We're here to introduce the concept of riders from another timeline that shouldn't be there, and this idea of, like I was postulating a week ago, that Geiz is actually the key to all of this. Now, first and foremost, we'll go ahead and talk about White Woes here. I like the Terminator reference in. I do believe that's the same lightning sound effect that you hear when you hear Kyle Reese coming back from the future to the past to save Sarah Connor, that they use there for White Woes showing up there in 2019. I do appreciate that time travel reference, but beyond that, I don't know that we needed another writer so quickly. I feel like we still needed to focus on all of the other legendary writers. Why do we need a third writer here in the mix? Now, I know a lot of people are referring to it, and I've been saying that a lot, is White Woes, but I think that's going to be a little confusing. So let's go ahead and refer to them as Woes Prime, the Woes that we've been dealing with up till now, and Alt Woes because he's from an alternate timeline. That way we'll clear things up. Now, of course, I already gushed a lot about Shinobi. I really like the design, but I'm wondering about the dream. So how exactly did Sougo see so perfectly what this guy would eventually become, or could potentially become? Was this something projected into his head, or does he have some sort of precognitive power here? We're not certain. But now at this point, anytime he has a dream, because I don't think this is the last one we'll get from him, they are all suspect now. I'm wondering whether or not they're legitimate. Now, as far as Geiz goes, as apparently being an alternate timeline savior, I'm wondering about that, because as we see here, the Woz that we already know is actually really okay with Omagio and his reign and his rise to power, and he's perfectly okay with making sure Sougo becomes that bad guy. So I wonder if that's not too dissimilar from Alt Woz, that he's just not telling everybody that, oh yeah, Geiz was the savior of the future, and then he also enslaved mankind too. But we're going to need more information on that going into next week's episode. I'm wondering how they're going to handle this now that we've got a third writer in the mix, and how they're going to balance out the story, and especially because now we've got an actor who's playing double duty, which doesn't happen often, but usually they do it to good effect. But those, of course, are my thoughts on the episode. I want to hear what you guys thought in the comments below, so let's go ahead and talk about a few things. First off, Kamen Rider Shinobi. Based off the first 3 minutes of this episode, would you guys be interested in watching a full series for Kamen Rider Shinobi? Secondly, Sougo's dream of 2022. Do you believe he actually perceived the future in his dream, or somebody projected it to him to make him see something that hasn't happened yet? And third, this is something I think is going to happen, but I want to see what you guys think. Do you believe that Woz Prime will eventually defeat Alt Woz and take the belt for himself? You tell me in the comments below. And of course, during the week, you can always talk to me over on social media. On Twitter, I'm at JoshKnight1st. This has been episode 17 of Rider Rewind for episode 17 of Kamen Rider Geo. Happy Woz 2019. I'm Josh Knight the First. I'll see you guys again next episode.